Hello, everybody. How are you doing? I'm doing fine. Thank you. Welcome to I Was Counting Up. And this is officially, I believe, number 20, my 20th OSR Reddit roundup. So a little bit of a milestone there, if you will. And I think I started doing these just kind of as a lark because I needed something to fill some extra time, and it's turned into, I guess, one of my few sort of only really regularly scheduled repeating thingamajiggy. So funny how that stuff works out. But I really dig doing it. I'm glad that folks have enjoyed participating. Don't have any programming notes. I did have 2 interviews this week. One with Daniel from Bandits Keep, friend of the channel. That's our sort of recurring, non-standardized chats. That was awesome. And then also yesterday with John McGuire about 3-2-1 action and his Point Nemo adventure, which is currently kickstarting. So check those out. I don't have any other notes, so let's rock and roll. And Restream is cooperating at the moment with my window shares, so that is good. We're looking at the OSR subreddit on the hot tab. Just hit refresh just in case. FR Hex Crawl the old school way. It's got a bunch of upvotes. Are they FR? Is that supposed to be Forgotten Realms? All right, I'm curious. It's gotten a lot of votes on it, so let's see what they have to say. Oh, it's a vidya. Is this new? I don't think I've seen this. Okay, so this is a video about it. Well, I don't really want to watch a video while I'm streaming a video. All right, let me back out of that. I'll give it an upvote. Let's see what the comments actually. Let's see your comments. Forgotten Realms Adventures for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition has no hex crawl map. Instead, there's a beautiful point crawl friendly spread, but without scale. So I guess this is the OP. Wanted to explore the Sword Coast anyway and did the old school way. Drawing hexes, exploring the wilderness, trying to survive each encounter. And here's how they did it. Oh, but it's also in Portuguese. Well, that might be really cool, but yeah, Portuguese. Hey, for the Brazilians and Portuguese and other folks who speak Portuguese, great. Not so helpful for me. Someone's looking for OSR, but BX OSC is not it. Well, this one might be good just to see. I don't have really a favorite mass combat rules, but I'm curious if other folks do. Maybe we can get some inspiration here. PW Throw Rug, looking for some ideas. Larger scale combat rules could be from an existing game that's cooked into the rules, or from a blog, or one-off rules compatible with another OSR system. There's always a rules compendium which has that battle system built in. Gorak, let me upvote this first of all. Take an upvote. Gorak mentions Delta's OED Book of War. Also, the War Machine rules from Beckme are good for resolving the entire battle in the background with a few rolls. Yep, those are both decent. Chris McDowell of Electric Bastion Land put me onto 1 Hour War Games and his modified version called Project 10. I don't know that one, but might be worth looking up. Yeah, battle system. Dragon Rampant, I've heard good things about. Axe Domains at War. Here's probably the big question that no one actually answered, which was, do you want the PCs in the combat or do you want the backdrop? Because if you're doing a backdrop type combat, which I've done before, you can pretty much just run it. I mean, what does that mean? What I mean is you can pretty much do with it however you want. You can decide on whatever terms you want to who's going to win or lose. In fact, what I was doing was what I had large-scale battle happening. It was a castle siege, and the PCs had different goals that they were trying to accomplish during the siege. Take down that captain or that big kind of beast. Look, there's siege towers over there. Take them down. Stop the enemy from sapping and getting under this wall. Those kinds of things. The more they succeeded, the more their side would be succeeding in the battle. So I would narrate as they were doing these things and taking out these different enemy pieces or putting obstacles to their advance, how the battle was changing. So I didn't actually have to roll any dice for the main battle. I let the PC's action dictate the those ebbs and flows. When the PCs got pushed back, they felt their side of the battle was being pushed back. When they were making progress, and their side was making progress. And when they were ultimately victorious in everything they did, their side was victorious. So in that way, I just had the battle in the background, and I wasn't worried if they were looking at particular elements of the battle. Depending on how they were doing, I would narrate how their forces were doing. If they were doing well and they looked to the side, then they would see allied forces also doing well. When it looked like the enemies were closing in on them, then that's what it looked like for the overall battle. And I thought it worked pretty well. I think if you are running a battle and you want to leave it up to the dice, and the PCs aren't particularly a part of it, then you can use a battle system, or you could just say, I have 1,000 orcs and I have 100 hill giants. So it's 10-1, right? 10 orcs for every hill giant. But I think for whatever these reasons, the hill giants might have an edge. Maybe I'll say, okay, 60-40 in favor of the orcs. Because I think if the hill giants can get going, and however I'm running them, whatever they're doing, right, maybe they could put the fear, and I'm afraid that the orcs who don't have great morale are going to break, and the hill giants are stern or whatever. Maybe they're a different kind of giant. Pick your giant. You could just say, okay, I got a 60-40. Roll that and then go with it. Things like battle system. Hey, chainmail also. Chainmail, you can use chainmail rules. Work just as well. And in fact, chainmail is nice if you want the players integrated. If the PCs are going to be leading things into battle, then you're going to want to look at something more like chainmail. Something like battle system, you're going to make some calculations. You're pretty much going to roll one set of dice. Essentially, you're going to do one kind of test, basically, for the battle. And then I think in battle system, you can even spit out what the casualties are like. I think it even gets granular. If not, you could probably invent whatever granularity you need. But if you want to play out turn by turn, something like Dragon Rampant, I think that's where that would fit in. Chainmail would fit in there. Hey, Bob Mosdell's in the chat. Hey, Bob Mosdell, have I looked at the D100 Dungeon World Builder? No, I have D100 Dungeon, and I've been meaning to do some videos on that, which I will do at some point. I have not gotten around to it. I don't know about World Builder. Bob Mosdell, hook me up. What is World Builder? Oh, and there, Voodoo Slug mentions in that Reddit stream mentions chainmail. All right, cool. Let us move on. No to hit roll. What's this one? Oh, look, someone's looking for it. Please, on Reddit, really wherever you post stuff, you've got this thing, this little title, right? This title field. Hey, give it. You're going to post something, a question, a comment. You got this title field. Use it. If you're looking for something, then you can put in the title, looking for a note to hit roll. If you have a note to hit roll that you would like to offer up, a house rule that you've created, you could say that. Check out my note to hit roll. You don't have to just put note to hit roll. Like, it's hard for us who are trying to find things to discover whether this topic you're posting is for us or not, because it's got so little content to it. Please help us. Take an upvote, but do better. That title field's not going to bite you. Just put something in there that we can use. Okay. Oh, I got to look at this one. Friend of the channel, the Red Caps. Oh, Bob Mossel says, okay, so D100 Dungeons, or D100 Dungeons World Builder just came out. Gives a procedural way to populate hexes. All right, I'll have to put that on my list. Oh, Red Caps. I would, but I can't listen. I don't even have my speaker. I don't have my headphones on. All right, check out the Red Caps, episode 62 for their charm person. I'll give it an upvote. Fortunately, I can't listen to it now to comment. Let's see. Will I break anything by swiping tables from DCC to use in OSE? No, you'll change the vibe, but you won't. I don't think you'll break anything. Looking for an artist. Okay, looking for a physical copy. Any systems where class and level are separate? Yes. Yes. Hunt for low fantasy skill-based system. Let's see. Here we have Retainers of the Comor Forest, free PDF. That's a picture. What is this? Tim Shorts. I don't know. That picture is not particularly helpful. What do the comments say? Are there anyone? Okay, it's some retainers. Okay, I'll give them an upvote. Take an upvote. Gothridge Manor. I've heard that name before. Where have I heard Gothridge Manor before? Which do I prefer and why? Sean McCoy talks about Mothership. Boy, not a whole lot so far. Adventure idea, A Dragon's Tears. All right. I'm going to skip. The name thing plus an Excel workbook with multiple dynamic spreadsheets, place, name, dungeon, NPC, and rumor generators. I'm still gun shy on Excel stuff just because I'm afraid of the old viruses hidden in Excel stuff, but I'll give an upvote. Sounds cool. Current house rules. This person sharing. All right, so this might be interesting. This is posted by Jacari. Alchemist Nocturne current house rules. I don't know. Trial Fortress V1. I don't know what that means, but let's take a look. Will this go there? Yes, it will. All right, I will post this in the chat. It's just one person's house rule, so who knows if it'll be great or not. But I do agree with the poster that they are kind of fun to read. It's interesting, and you get ideas. All right. I'm just posting this. There we go. Current house rules. I don't know what in parentheses Trial Fortress V1. I don't know what that means, but okay. This is the current rule set they are using. The arguments for some of these points are already listed somewhere in the blog. Others are mostly consequences of applying them. For monsters, equipment, procedures not listed, etc., I use BX. The rest is heavily modified. Okay, so BX is the base. Hit die are hits. Damage rolls and hit points do not exist. Instead, a successful hit takes away hit dice, which are the equivalent of health points. This would effectively equate wizards and fighters' health, as there are no different HD sizes, but fighter types tend to have more HD. See the next point. I was actually talking to somebody on I think it might have been the Audio Dungeon Discord about that kind of concept. Hey, Don, what's up, AOL? Well, AOL's been down for a while, but I feel like they're coming back. Them and Earthlink, they're teaming up. And I know that was a typo. I presume you meant what's up all and not what's up AOL, but I thought I would update everyone on the state of America Online these days. Not that I actually know what it is. Anyway, on that, I think it was the Audio Dungeon Discord talking about running OD&D with chainmail combat. The idea of having essentially hits, just knocking off hit dice. So if you have one hit die, you fight as one man, then one hit knocks you out. If you fight as three men, then it takes 3 hits. So that was pretty interesting. And yes, as is suggested here, the fact that a fighter will, if they survive as they level up, they will get those fighting as extra men. That will unlock, they reach hero and superhero status faster in terms of martial combat, would mean that even though one hit die equates to one man, regardless of what class you are, the fact is that they will more easily get to being fighting as 2 men, fighting as 3 men, fighting as 4 men, etc. So they gain hit dice, others don't. I've been kind of digging it, actually, as I've been thinking about that, but I'd want to do something. But I think there is something to the fact that even though you might only be able to take 1 hit, so you have the cleric with 5 hit points. With these kind of systems, at 5 hit points doesn't matter. If they have 1 hit die, they take 1 hit, they're knocked out. But if you have 5 hit points, there's a little bit of a different feel to it because you feel like you might be able to take that hit. You've got, a 60% chance that you might live, right? Because if you roll damage, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, you're still okay. only that 5 or 6. You got about a 33% chance of getting taken out. I like that. I appreciate it. I like that chance that you might take your chances, or even if you have 2 hit points, you might get lucky and the goblin with a sling only hits you for 1 damage. You lose some of that. And I wonder if there would be some way to preserve. I like the simplicity here. I like it a lot, but some way to preserve that you might have a little bit of an extra chance. Then it's just, hey, if I get hit once, I'm just dead no matter what. I haven't seen any of these systems in action. It's just all been sort of theoretical right now. But I'm kind of digging it. And I definitely would like to think more about and expand more. So if you know any systems that you've played that have done this kind of one hit for 1 hit die sort of system, I would love to hear. Okay, classless. Roll 3d6 in order, then what normally would be your class feats are instead derived from attributes in this basis. What are class feats? So strength, if you roll a 9 or less, you have -1 hit die, but you always have a minimum of 1. 12 to 13 plus 1 hit die, you can wear plate. 14 plus 1 melee attack bonus, plus 1 open doors. 15 plus 1 hit die, plus 1 critical range in blunt or 2-handed weapons. 16 plus 2 melee attack bonus, plus 1 open doors. 17 plus 1 hit die. 18 plus 2 melee attack bonus, plus 1 open doors. I presume you get everything. All these stack, I'm guessing. Strength is also equal to the inventory slots you have before you go encumbered. Then you can carry +3 more. So this is interesting. My issue with a lot of this stuff, and I've thought about these kind of things too. But one of the things I really like about 5th edition, about OSR, that I dislike in 5th edition is how heavily it seems to be skewed towards your attributes in 5th edition. I like in the OSR, and I think in my home game, my players all have kind of dreadful stats by most people's measures. But they can succeed and they can survive. And they don't have this concept of, I'm too low, or I can't have, and maybe it's a community thing and not a rules thing of, my fighter doesn't have strength, at least strength 16, so why bother, kind of thing. With these kinds of systems, part of what I'm doing, I appreciate. They are trying to, you're really drilling down to the core, right? Instead of saying, oh, I've got strength and I've got this other thing over here, and you're going to all boil it down into 1. But that boiled down into 1 means that whatever that 3d6 roll is, it's either giving you a lot or you can look at it as taking away a lot, but it really makes your character's entire lifespan is really tied to those initial rolls. I kind of like in the classic OSR that, yeah, you're going to get some bonuses or some penalties based on your attributes, but those are going to only be important at low levels. And if you can succeed through there, then the stuff that's really going to count is your class abilities, which don't have anything to do with your attributes. You get better at thieving abilities regardless of what your dexterity is. Your open door, your pick locks or climb surfaces, whatever you want to look at. Notice there are no callbacks to, oh, it's this bonus to your dexterity. It doesn't matter. You can have a dexterity of 2, but if you're an 8th level thief, however clumsy and you're immobile you are, when you're just standing around, put a tree or some kind of surface in front of you, and you're like a blob that can just up the tree. I really appreciate that. So these systems that make everything very dependent on these original 5 or 6 whatever rolls of those 3d6 rolls, I just feel like it just puts you in that space of, I got to do well on these rolls. Whereas I like to be able to tell somebody, look, it is what it is. And sure, it would be great to have 18 strength, 18 dex, 18 con down the line, but you can survive. And if you look at your class, if you can manage to survive, your class skills will outstrip and outweigh whatever your attributes are. And the attribute stuff ends up being more like flavor down the line. But that's me. So now we get dexterity. 9 or less, -1 to thief skills. 12 to 13, +1 to thief skills. 1 plus X chance in 6 to perform move silently, hide in shadows, pickpocket, etc. Also, against saves requiring reflexes, you can roll this if it's higher than your chance per level. 14, you get a +1 to your armor class. 15, you get +1 hit dice, +1 crit range with swords or ranged weapons. 16, +1 to thief skills. 17, +1 to thief skills. You are a peak thief by then. 18, +1 to armor class. Dexterity measures how much a thief you are. That is why it doesn't get much into missile fire, just a little. All right. Now, intelligence, 9 or less, as in 10, but without any bonus, might be useful for narrative purposes somehow. I'm not sure what they mean. 10, you have a starting background skill. Choose that skill during the game at any moment. It cannot be stealth or combat related. You have +1 when using that skill or knowledge in any way. You score 12 to 13, you get +2 to any background skill. If you score 14, you have an X in 6 chance to produce an item related to your background. On a fail, exhaust this gift until downtime. They don't say what the X in 6 chance is. So is that the X being your background skill, those bonuses? Not sure. 15, you get +2 to a skill. 16, +2 to a skill. 17, +1 to a skill. You have a second quantum item, see above. 18, +2 to a skill. Intelligence represents the technical part of thieves. More in the specialist limitations of the Flame Princess version. There are some setting established background skills already, like healing, alchemy, bushcraft, or thief. Thief only covers the disarm, trap, / lockpick part, as the ninjutsu skill is dominated by dexterity. Now we have wisdom, 9 or less. Haven't thought of a penalty. 12 to 13, +1 to magic skill. Is used to perceive magical auras around using magical items and casting spells. To do so, fire the spell and roll your skill or under. A success fires the spell instantly, even prior to an incoming attack, and the spell is not lost. On a failure, the spell is lost after casting, and it comes off at the end of the round. Being attacked or disturbed impedes you from casting this turn. 14, +1 magic skill, +1 spell. Your first spell. It takes a big roll here to have a character start with spells. 16 to 20% of the characters will. 15 +1 spell. 16 +1 magic skill, +1 spell. 17 +1 magic skill, +1 spell. And then 18 +1 spell. So wisdom is kind of your magic attribute. The spell list is also condensed, with some of them being merged into one, and many of them scaling with charisma. For now, I'm making it on the fly, but we'll edit to post the final list. As many other things on my house rules, spells can also be taken mid-game, but you keep them once you choose them. Personally, I think it's fair for players to choose spells once they are immersed in the context of the game, even if it can be seen as quote-unquote cheating. It also makes charge in much faster. Well, I would definitely agree that the less your wizard player is going to be flipping around, agonizing over the however many spells they get, that is faster. Of course, you could just do what I do, which is you roll randomly, which is sometimes you can end up with some folks with some amazing spells, but then sometimes they've got some fairly, let's be honest, there are some much more niche, nigh kind of useless, depending on what your situation spells. But at least that way you're not taking time out of charge, and it's just roll some dice. Here's what you got. Charisma, 9 or less, -1 reaction. 12 to 13, +1 hit die. 14, +1 reaction. 15, you or your party can re-roll 1 save per day. Not sure what that's to do with charisma, or why you would get a hit die out of charisma, but whatever. 16, +1 reaction. 17, +1 hit die. 18, +1 reaction. Charismatic characters with no other abilities have some hit die and survival resources on their own to represent their chosen one aura. I say, all right, I can buy that. For now, I'm winging it with the number of hirelings. They never reach high numbers anyway. Some spells increase in effect based on the reaction bonus, so it's a good choice for wizards to have as a secondary attribute. And then Constitution, they have renamed as Combat. 9 or less, you are a non-combatant, -2 to attack. 12 to 13, +1 hit die, +1 to attack with your favorite weapon. Choose a type at any time, but stick with it afterwards. 14, +1 hit die, +1 to attack any weapon. Your critical hits deal triple damage instead of double. +1 hit die, +1 to attack any weapon, and then you just keep stacking those as you get from 15 through 18. Basically, this is your fighter. fighter level. At 18, you stack +6 combat bonus, which is 1 less than what a level 10 fighter has. For now, this is fine for me. So am I to presume here that we're going to be able to adjust these moving forward, that you're not stuck with what you've got, that you're going to actually increase these? I feel like that's what they're going for, but I'm not sure yet. But I kind of have a feeling that's going to be that's the thing, or a thing with this. Let me just get a swig of watered down apple juice for the working man. All right, so we have some weapon differentiation. Martial weapons deal a critical on a 20 times 2 hits. I'm guessing double damage. Two-handed weapons deal it on a 19 to 20. Swords/bows and blunt/two-handed weapons increase this range by 1 based on dexterity/strength, respectively. Hey, Nothing says, boy, I don't know. The last thing I want in a game mod is tying more mechanics to ability scores. Yeah, that's my general. I think if you missed that, it's pretty much what I said a little bit earlier. Given 3d6 down the line can be rather rough. I think almost all my players, they maybe have one. I mean, honestly, I think there's one of them that maybe has two attributes, like above 10. I think maybe they each have one just by chance. If you are able to increase these at each level, because this is classless, they're doing this classless, so presuming there's some way to advance, you can raise these up, then that might be okay, especially if how much experience it takes to raise one of these ups is dependent on your score. So if you're starting from 8, it's fairly easy to raise yourself up to 10, maybe from 10 to whatever. I mean, that's really kind of interesting, right? If you have, instead of having your class, your XP per class level, right, the way it will ramp up in different kind of curves and all that stuff, if it's instead based on which attribute you're trying to raise and then where you are, so that if you start off with some really god-awful stats, it might not take much experience for you to beef those up. But if you have some 14, 15, 16s, it becomes a long-term deal to get up there. Now, the downside of that is that if somebody just happens to roll lucky, it's like they're starting at mid-level. Someone who's unlucky, it's like they're starting at first level. Somebody who starts with a couple of 16s or a 16 and a 14, it's like they're already kind of a mid-level character, and someone that starts with a bunch of 10s is essentially your first-level character. And how does that work? And it's kind of that rich get richer a little bit thing, which can be tough. But who knows? We gotta get to the bottom. All right, so where was I on the weapon differentiation stuff? Let's see. Daggers have -2 to hit. It is widely accepted that a range of +2 to hit equates to +1 damage in the common rules. So having 1 die step less in damage can be translated in the big picture by reducing their to hit. Oh, that's interesting. Bows have also -2 to hit to separate them from crossbows, which need to be reloaded every other turn. Also, crossbows only receive half of your attack bonus. Hand-to-hand combat is also at -2 and only deals damage on successful quote-unquote open doors check. Combat stunts like disarming, etc. can be attempted by taking a -2 to the roll. Target might get a save or an open doors check to prevent it, whichever is higher. Armor uses the rules already explained on a recent post. All right, I'm not going to go into that one, but we've got some bonuses given different armor types. On to initiative. The side with the single combatant of the highest hit dice goes first. They choose which character starts after every combatant member of the opposing side that hasn't acted yet takes its turn. So everyone has done their actions. Ranged weapons that are readied can be shot reactively. Spells can also be cast reactively if a roll is passed, which they covered under wisdom. So this is interesting. So the highest HD goes first, which, I mean, at least at low levels, is going to be your monsters. No mention is made of surprise, which would be a big factor for me. At least I'd want to make sure my players are aware of it. If they have to know that, look, you're level 1, so you're 1 HD. Sure, you're kobolds, and I don't know if goblins are 1 HD or some fraction of HD, but just about everything else is going to be at least 1. And they're going to go first if everyone's flat-footed. So you better fight for initiative. Leveling up. Here we go. Leveling up looks like table below for everyone with numbers based on the fighter chart. I'm considering lowering them 5% for everyone, as if every character was a fighter with some strength as prime requisite. Saving throws are unified with additional situational penalties as I see fit, and they are all done with a d6. I have grown fond of this method, and bonuses or penalties feel significantly stronger. In addition, save plus HD, save plus hit dice. PCs who level up roll 2d20 and choose 2 attributes. If they roll over that attribute, the attribute increases by 1. All right, so they're doing basically straight up flat levels. I would actually think that it might be to do the leveling up your attributes themselves, since those are kind of your classes anyway, and figuring something out based on that. It does have that throwback, though. The throwback, if you use something like a standard array, some other ways you come up with it, then that throwback becomes less, or that drawback of having some folks start with significantly better stats obviously is tossed out the window. And then they have some custom races using from another post, posted by Jack Tremaine. All right, well, those are some interesting rules. I'm not sure it's quite my jam, but I appreciate what they're doing. There is a lot there, like Nothing pointed out, a lot there that depends on what your starting roles are, which is a little bit brutal, which is kind of why I would think use a starting array, and then you get to level up your attributes, and then those kind of represent your different, which is kind of cool because it's sort of everyone's everything. You want to be a fighter, then start leveling up your strength, and you can put your strength highest. Want to be a thief? That's Dex. Want to be a cleric? That's Wisdom. You want to be what would it be? A magic user? That's your Intelligence. And then charisma can be kind of your catch-all, or maybe you could, if you wanted to have a bard type, that could be that kind of thing. The only part that it maybe doesn't work, or maybe it's not that it doesn't work, but that all these attributes are basically locked in here. So what do you do when someone wants to be something else that doesn't fit into there? Because you can do a lot of combinations. Oh, I'm going to be somewhat strong. I'm going to be somewhat dex. That way I'm kind of like a fighter thief sort of thing. Oh, I can fighter, a little bit thief. But there's something, part of I think the fun in OSR games, like we were looking at Glog and things like that, is being able to come up with all kinds of crazy classes. I don't know how this system, because it's so standardized and because it locks in directly to those attributes, how you could create custom classes unless you started adding more features to each of those attributes, which might make it unwieldy, but that might be a down the line problem. That was that. Let me give it an upvote. Okay. Oh, here we got a how-to on YouTube, so I can't check that out right now. I'm sure I probably could do some kind of, hey, what is that thing where people call it, where they kind of comment over it? But I don't want to do that yet. But I appreciate it. I'll have to check it out. It's called How I Design Wilderness Adventures Part 2, detailing the vignettes. Someone reviewed a bunch of OSR plant books with their mom. That's cool. Let me give them an upvote. I'll have to come back to that later. Let's see. What do we got here? An XL treasure generator for AD&D First Edition. Is someone posting something to share, or is this a thing? Okay, maybe they're posting a tool. This is posted by Silencio Neiman or Silencian Man. I'm not sure. Okay, so someone's got a Google spreadsheet with. Okay, so it's just a Google spreadsheet for a treasure generator for AD&D First Edition. Let's see. In the chat, Nothing says, every iteration of my Heartbreaker has ability scores mattering less. A lot of my players feel real significant stress when rolling ability scores for a PC they might be playing for 1 years plus. Yeah, and I wonder. I usually tell players, I've told my players this, it's been my experience. I don't know why. I feel like there's some kind of perverse luck in the OSR game that I wasn't in as a player for a small stretch. halfling thief that I rolled, and I kind of had to pick a halfling. I didn't have to, but I kind of picked those because my stats were pretty awful, but they weren't so bad to reach the point of no return awfulness. So I'm just trying to maximize. Okay, well, what have I got? What can I do? How can I maximize these stats for survivability? And it turned out, okay, go halfling, go thief will get me there. Well, some of those players I played with that first group had much better. I mean, I was jealous of those attribute roles that they had. But by the third or fourth session, I was the only one that had survived. Everyone else had been killed off in a pretty fantastic, almost TPK. So you never know. And with the OSR games, not that much depends on it. Your saving throws don't really depend on those scores, right? Your armor class, maybe if you have really low dex, you're taking some penalty. I mean, depending on your OSR version, certainly if you have low strength, it's harder for you to hit stuff if that's your deal. But I just try to point out, listen, long term, it's going to be your classes. Take it as someone who has played subpar characters with subpar attributes. If you can be smart, you can be lucky, use your class stuff, you can be okay. But I can appreciate the people, especially if they're coming from a more modern game standpoint. Like I said, one of the things that at least the community around 5th edition, I just don't appreciate is how they push for this kind of perfection in your stats. Oh, if you don't have a 16 in strength, well, you just might as well take that paladin and chuck it in the trash or whatever it is. I don't know if paladins actually care about strength or not, or fighters or whatever stat it is. I think it's bad. So I can definitely see why in a Heartbreaker try to minimize them down, and then maybe end up with nothing. I mean, I could see you running it with just nothing at all, and you just role play whatever you want someone's particular weaknesses. You want someone to be kind of strong? Well, they are until they got to roll dice, and then they use whatever, or they're going to want to play them as book smart. Go for it. I think there's certainly something to be said for just saying, hey, how much do we need these things? But I kind of like the idea of the DNA and how you can look at your sheet and kind of look at those attributes and sort of meld your character from them. But yeah, I definitely don't like when too much gets locked into those things. All right, so there's that generator. I will skip it, but I gave it an upvote. Okay, finally played that game everyone talks about. I don't get the hype. I don't know what that is. I don't care. A comparative exploration of OSR RPG systems, the mecha hack. Is this I'll read the comments. I'm kind of curious if it's something. If it's an article, I would like to read it. Sounds interesting. If it's a product, I don't have the wherewithal at the moment to get further on. What is it? All right, so it is an article. I think I've looked at something on this place before, but it's posted at Leyline Press. I will post this in here. Comparative exploration. Null Terminus said they've been doing a whole series of these articles. Okay, cool. So I don't know the mech hack. So should I? Oh, maybe Dungeon Crawl Classics might be more worthwhile for me simply because I know that one a bit. I don't know the mecha hack. How long is this article? All right, I'm going to skip this one. Maybe I'll have to come back and check this out when I can do one that I actually can contribute to a little bit more, but I'll give it an upvote. Excuse me. Okay, white box, FMAG. What is FMAG? In your opinion, what makes something OSR? Man, I got my video. I think I got a couple of videos on that. It doesn't really matter anymore. I almost feel like I need a new. I want to trailblaze a new term. I need to crowdsource trailblaze a new term for. I don't even know what it would be. OSR, new school, classic, new Coke, Coca-Cola Classic, Diet Coke, caffeine-free OSR, caffeine-free role-playing. Anyone interested in contributing OC to a Zine? I don't know what OC is. I guess original content? Okay, here we go. This might be interesting. Posted by Diago Arte. I mustered all remaining energies today. It's pretty late here to write a new post on the blog talking about iconic OSR style encounters and why they're interesting. All right, let's do this. It's only been 40 minutes into this. We're finally getting to something. Don says OSR is great. It's not that I mind OSR as a word, or something, but it to me it encompasses too much. And it's been around a long time. I don't know in terms of, you think about how long the Renaissance was or something like that, but I feel like for purposes of what's happening, I'm ready to think about what a post OSR, right? What do we call the time after the Renaissance? The Renaissance has come, things have happened, people have gone back to look at the classics, people have deconstructed the classics and come out with new stuff, and then eventually you move into something, you move past it. So what would that look like? Maybe we're not there quite yet, but we should at least start, I think, thinking about it, because how long are we going to keep talking about the Renaissance? It can't be something that goes on forever. There you go. Time to move on to the RPG Enlightenment. Exactly. Or maybe we'll succumb to some RPG Dark Age. Okay, this was posted on November 9, 2021 by Diogo Nogueira. Iconic encounters. You must be this tall to ride. I got this idea for a series of posts about the most iconic encounters in old school style adventures. I don't mean this type of adventure is repetitive, but there are some types of encounters that appear with certain regularity, are quite entertaining and challenging, and thus have become iconic for me. Some really pretty art. The first of these I would about is the "you must be this tall to ride" encounter, which often is found in the beginning of an adventure, or in a section that will introduce the meaty part of it. First heard about the term hearing Jim Wampler pass around some of his wisdom. It has a few characteristics I will examine further below. Number 1, in the beginning of the adventure, or at the beginning of the most important part of it, or I guess that's where it is. These are bullet points if you're listening to this. It involves a very difficult challenge that can cause a TPK if not handled well. It can be a powerful monster or group of monsters, a devious trap, powerful spell, and so on. There must be tips the player can pick up that indicate how the PCs can deal with the challenge. And then finally, the challenge can be dealt with in a much easier way using cleverness and exploiting some weakness, which can be inferred using the tips. It happens in the beginning. It's interesting to place this type of encounter right in the beginning of the adventure, especially in short scenarios and one-shots, or right before the most important part of it, when things will get serious. Doing this will help set the tone of the adventure and puts everyone on the edge of their seats for what's to come. Players will realize the challenges in the game are serious and are not there just to entertain them or make them look good. There's real risk and at the same time real triumph over that risk. They will feel a much greater feeling of accomplishment when they survive the encounter and the adventure as a whole because of this. And as things start with such a thrilling and deadly encounter, they will be at the edge of their seat, excited to see what's happening and what will happen next. Nothing kills an adventure like boring and predictable encounters. I'm not exactly sure what examples they're looking at from here, but I think there's one, I don't know, call it a caveat, you can lean too far on something like this, and what you could end up doing is the same way that you can be put on the edge of your seat. It's like, oh my gosh, this was whatever. You can really also take the wind out of the party's sails. And if the party just gets blown out at the beginning of an adventure, that can really put a damper on things. So I'm not sure what examples you're looking at. I'm not sure exactly what they have in mind, but you have to consider that as well. And everything's going to be, party dependent, table dependent, blah, 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 blah. But it's easy at the beginning of an adventure to just get deflated, and you have to be wary of that. Okay. This thing will kill us. As said above, the challenge must be very difficult, possibly deadly, for this to work. Players need to fear for their characters and realize the odds are against them, if they decide to simply try to overcome the challenge using the most obvious strategy, usually violence. One way to do that is by telegraphing the danger to the players using the environment and NPCs. Have the thing that is the challenge show its powers, its threat, using these things. Creatures kill NPCs, destroy furniture, and put things on fire. Traps and other non-living targets have the remnants of their victims around them. Another way is letting the PC suffer some damage and losses that are not so great right up front, so they understand they will lose a lot more if they just keep doing what they're doing. That's, again, that dicey one. I think OSR groups are better about recognizing when things don't seem to be that hopeful for success and then backing off and regrouping, but it's kind of your miles might vary if you're counting on that. Wait a minute. However, the challenge isn't unbeatable, and there is a way to overcome it with some ease. And there must be indicators that characters can see and be aware of that will inform them of this possible course of action. How to introduce these tips is the hardest part of designing this type of encounter, but don't fret too much. It's always best to give more and more obvious information instead of giving less or unclear tips. The characters could see some NPC accidentally push a creature away with a torch, indicating it fears fire and is vulnerable to it. They can see inscriptions on the walls of the temple showing that the death ray trap is deactivated by sacrificing warm blood into the statue's mouth. They can find a diary of a fallen adventurer at the corpses near the challenge, detailing a theory that will actually work against the obstacle. Remember to include multiple tips from various sources, allowing players to figure it out even if they miss some of them. And voila! When the characters figure out the easier way to deal with the challenge, make sure to show them it's working. They will need some reassuring in this strenuous situation to keep going until the end. This might require some creative thinking by the referee and some good descriptions of what's going on. For example, when they wield fire against the fire-vulnerable monster, the creature's wounds seem way worse than before or than they expected. When they speak the name of the machine's creator, its energy falters. Anyway, be creative and make sure the easier way is actually easier, helping them overcome the challenge without much sacrifice. Having figured it out and having defeated what otherwise could have been a truly fatal encounter will make the players feel a great sense of accomplishment and hopefully make your adventure memorable. See you on the next installment of Iconic Encounters. Don put a bunch of stuff in the chat. All right, so let me just hit this comment. So Don defining OSR for them as BX and some mods for improvement. Plays mostly 5e, but with OSR themes. Gritty, dangerous, I use advantage, disadvantage, proficiency bonus, ascending AC, and skill checks. OSR is a state of mind. Nothing wrong with that. And also says, remember, you are the DM. Keep your players playing. Yep. Not bad advice. I mean, the only thing with this article, I would have liked if there was an example. I don't know off the top of my head which things he's thinking of. I'm sure I'm just not thinking of them enough. If I went back and pulled out some modules, I would find some. The "you must be this tall to ride" is interesting as a phrase, because that to me, I actually thought of as something, I thought they were actually talking about something different, which was more of that concept of kind of gating things. The best, and it's not really the example I want to use, but it's the one that kind of comes to mind, is if you think about it in a Zelda game, you've played any of the Legend of Zeldas, the original one, there would be areas you couldn't get to because you didn't have the tool yet. Okay, you can go through this dungeon. What's that crack in the wall? Well, you don't know, or it looks interesting, but you can't do anything with it. Oh, now you've unlocked the bomb weapon. Okay, now you can come back and find hidden areas because you have the bombs, right? You need to have this thing to progress. In the same way at an amusement park, right? You need to be this tall to ride it. If you're not this tall, you can't ride it. It's not even about trying and failing. It's simply about you can't do it. So I kind of thought that was the direction they were going in. This is more about kind of setting a tone. It's really almost a puzzle sort of concept for an encounter. You are essentially teaching the party or showing the party or trying to demonstrate to the party what they need to do. It's kind of a training thing almost, in that you're sort of training them as, hey, don't run in guns blazing because your guns may not do anything. You might need something else. I think, as I said, you have to be careful, because if your party just goes in guns blazing and they're foiled, and maybe you didn't give enough of these clues, enough of this context to make them realize about these other opportunities that were there, then they're going to just feel defeated and deflated, and they may not want to press on, or they may not be enthusiastic about pressing on. They're just going to think like, we're going to a meat grinder. So you got to be careful. And that's where I'd like to see the example, see like, oh, well, how do they envision doing this practically? Because it sounds great on a practical level. What would be your encounter? But it's a good thing. And I think especially for new parties, new players, it could definitely be useful to try to help them learn in an OSR setting. The front door isn't always the best way, or just, rolling your initiative and pulling out your weapon maybe not be the way to go. Nothing says this type of encounter is great, but I don't have a problem with making a super hard encounter with no telegraphed way to win. Players can figure it out or run. Yes, there is that. And the other thing of it is where is this encounter? And part of this too is whether, are you doing something for your home table, or are you doing something like you're creating a product? If you're doing something for your home table, then if it's just being hard and they run away, that's fine. In my game, let's say if I go in the next session, they're going to go somewhere in these caves, and I decide to drop something really awful and high level in there, and they need to run away, that's fine, because my game doesn't revolve around whether they continue into that tunnel or that cave or not. If they want to run away and then like, man, we're going to have to come back here in 3 levels, we're going to go off and explore something else, that's fine. If I was designing a module, that same kind of thing would be considered bad design, because the concept of the module is not you get to the front door, turn around, run away, and then go play another module. So that kind of changes the angle, I guess, we would be looking at. Don says, running away from danger is fun too. It absolutely can be. A different kind of fun. Linkian says, it's not my job to resolve your problems. It's my job to solve your solutions. That's also true. Yeah, I don't have any problem with not coming out with a big solution. Again, it really has more to do with what does this encounter represent in your game. If you can't get in the front door of this module that you are trying to play test and stuff so you can publish without doing something, then it needs to be handled a certain way. If you're playing a sandbox game and you decide to drop something really hard in their path, knowing that there's 800 other things that they could go back and do until they think about how to get around that huge thing, then that's a different thing, right? So kind of what you need to do is going to change depending on what your goals are for this particular thing. All right. Oh, the sun's finally come out. It's been kind of rainy all morning. Did I give it an upvote? I did. Oh, and let's see. There's only one real comment in there. Heretic 007. Give an upvote. Reading this brought up the Sphinx of White Plume Mountain to mind. The party simply cannot proceed without overcoming this obstacle in some fashion, and it sets the tone for the dungeon. If you try brute force, you're likely to fail miserably, but engaging the challenge with your wits can open the way. And this theme carries into the dungeon proper, where some very bad things can happen if you try to blunder through, rather than stop, think, and carefully try different ways to advance. And I would agree with that. But the one thing with something like the Sphinx, which is important to note, as the Sphinx as a mythological character has a lot of flavor surrounding it about talking to it. Most people, I would say most folks probably have some idea, even on some level, of, the riddle of the Sphinx. They ask questions of the Sphinx. So using the Sphinx as that kind of barriers, that sort of gatekeeper works, because if you know anything at all about Sphinxes, if the term means anything to you at all, you probably have on some level something about, riddles. And what a riddle is going to be, it's going to be asking questions, doing that. So that the use of that particular creature, I think, does invite players to look at it a certain way. And that's something you can use to your advantage. If you're using a creature that has some kind of folklore around it that's well known, much like if you're vampires, you put wooden stakes and garlic around, or wolfsbane or silver. The connections are there, and those being there will help your players make it into fiction because they're aware of it in our own culture. Same thing with sphinxes and riddles. If you're just making up your own kind of thing, and there's none of that around there, then you have to work a little bit harder to put that context in there of why should we not do, why should we go talk to this thing if it looks like some kind of aberration from the gates of hell? That looks like a gibbering mouther or something rather than a sphinx. A lot less likely that your average player is just going to go up and talk to it unless, as a GM, you provide context for them. So you have to be kind of aware of that. You can use that sort of meta knowledge that we have to your advantage when dealing with things, but it can also work against you if you don't take advantage of it the right way. If you don't look at it the right way. All right, but that was a cool article. I got 5 minutes. Can I get one more in here? One more. Let's see. Free download. Magic Swords with a Purpose. Is this a discussion or a question? Oh, it's a question. I wanted something. Here we go. The Soup Witch, a wandering encounter. All right, we'll try this one. It's a quick one, hopefully. Posted to the Sheeps and Sorcery blog. I will put the link in here momentarily, hopefully. Okay, it doesn't seem like it's too long. I always feel like when it's about the end and I'm looking for one more thing to cover, I end up finding the thing that's takes me an hour to read. All right, here comes the link in the chat. This is posted to the Sheep and Sorcery blog on November 8th. Over the hills floats a delectable odor, strange yet inviting, bringing to mind far-off places and exotic spices. Then you hear the strange rumblings of iron feet as an enormous pot crests the hill. It is a massive cast-iron vessel with 4 legs, each tipped by a golden claw. A stove, glowing with heat, has been built into its bottom. Steam gently puffs through the holes in its lid. Something like a brass-railed porch has been built at its top where an old lady rides, wearing a wide-brimmed hat. As the massive pot approaches, she takes out a long, broad ladle, tapping the pot. Pot, stop! The pot obediently comes to a halt and lowers itself until its stove just barely hovers above the ground. The old woman unfurls a rope ladder and slowly and awkwardly makes her way down. Fare thee well, travelers. Most simply call me the Soup Witch, and that name serves me well. Her large hat surrounds her with a substantial aura of shade. She wears a shawl over her shoulders, and her clothes bear many patches in different shapes, like stars and moons. She hefts her mighty ladle over her shoulder. I have been making this soup for years beyond number, and have seen lands such that you could not believe. Heroes of old ate my soup and were strengthened, and you might as well. For this soup has been building in flavor for centuries, and I am still adding more. I have heard this region has many promising ingredients. Fetch some for me, and I will reward you. Each person who brings something to the soup will leave with some. That is my way. Hee hee hee. Ingredients. I seek after only the finest of ingredients. Rarer things of magic and moonlight. Power tastes good. Hee hee hee. All right, so we get white weed, which will give you +5 max HP for a day. I have heard this weed grows among the oldest barrow mounds. It is said the folk that interred their dead there began their work upon the cairns of even older and stranger people. Yet, embrace your death into you, and you shall have life. Hee hee hee. Next, Star Moss restores the use of a spell or gives a spell another use for the day. It is said a wandering star took pity on the deep caves where starlight never touches. So she gave up a little of her light that there might be light in the deepest darkness. If you look up in a dark cave and see the starry skies overhead, that is star moss. I hear there is some in the depths of the deep moon caverns. And then troll meat, +1 to melee attacks and damage for a day. Gotta sear troll meat a little before you put it in the pot. Learn that lesson the hard way. Hee hee hee. Old King Gelthior used trolls to pull his caravans laden with gold. A double portion of profit might be had. Hee hee hee. And then finally, snapdragons, half damage from fire for a day. Where dragon's fire has scorched the earth, unusual plant life grows. Watch your fingers round those petunias. All the effects of the soup endure and stack upon future visits, although the Soup Witch might need a different ingredient to achieve the same effect. Each time the party returns with an ingredient, the soup becomes more potent. Soup Witch will give a single large pot, enough to feed the entire party once if you bring her a substantial supply of any of these ingredients. Which ones the party brings is up to them. Oh, Bob Mostel, Tabasco. Yep. Or some peppers. That was really cool. I like it. Very nice. No stats for the witch, but that's okay. This is one, or hopefully the party is smart not to person that could give them good stuff. I'd be curious. I suppose we could just figure out what kind of, it'd be interesting to think about what kind of powers and things that walking, at least semi-intelligent pot could have. Good stuff. And that was, again, from the Sheep and Sorcery blog. Did they mention who wrote it? The actual author? No. Oh, there it is. Okay, so Sheep and Sorcery is the blog of Michael Kennedy. I'm assuming that Michael Kennedy wrote this. Oh, Bob Mostel gives a whole new meaning to roll aids. But bumped. Yep. It does, but it's cool. It's a very nice, has that a little bit of that Miyazaki flavor to it. I could see that witch just straight out of one of his movies and popping into your game. Cool. All right, folks. That's all I got for this week. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Give the video or the stream a thumbs up on your way out the door if you don't mind. If you're in here and you're not subscribed, go ahead and throw me a subscription. I appreciate it a lot. And, I'm also trying to spread the word. I try not to be a pest. So if you guys want to spread the word on my behalf, share these videos with folks you think might enjoy them, that might help me out. Get the word out, spread the word about all the fun things we're doing in here. That would be awesome. But other than that, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. As it is Friday, as we're streaming, have a great weekend. Game on.